Hey everyone, Twana Michelle here, Narcissistic Abuse Recovery Coach and Mental Health Therapist. And today I'm going to talk to you guys about why women don't leave. Women get so much flack about not leaving their unhealthy, abusive relationships. And sometimes it can feel very judgmental to question someone. And listen, I know men experience abuse and dysfunction in relationships as well. So if you are a man watching this, then this applies to you as well, okay? I'm just speaking specifically about women or using the term women because that's who I mostly work with, women with interpersonal trauma, women who have great difficulty getting out of their unhealthy relationships. And being a woman myself, and not only understanding this from a professional level, but also from a personal point of view. So that's the reason I use the term women. But anyway, as I was saying, a lot of women get so much judgment about staying in these relationships. And it's almost as if when someone discovers that a woman is in an abusive relationship, sometimes, very often actually, the first question would be, why do they stay? Why do they accept that? Why do they tolerate that? And it makes sense, right? Because you want to know what would make someone put up with a situation like that. But at the same time, it's like when we question why these women stay, we should, right? Because in order for a woman or a person to get out of a situation like that, they need to understand what's keeping them stuck there. And then they can work on changing that, whatever that is. But I think it would be helpful if we could ever, as a society, get to a place where we can first question, why is that person abusing that woman? Why is that person manipulating that woman? Why is that person causing intentional harm to that woman or that man, whoever? But we don't ask that first. We ask, why are they there? Listen, let me tell you, it sounds judgmental, and yes, we do need to kind of change the narrative a bit and focus more on the abuser rather than the victim or survivor of that abuse. But on the other hand, I totally 100% get it, because we are responsible for our own lives. And if we want change in our lives, then we have to create it. We have to do the work. We have to take the steps. I advocate for that. I do on my videos. I do in my therapy sessions, in my coaching. I advocate for taking control of your life and creating the life that you want to see and doing whatever healing work that you need to do to get yourself out of a position where you're stuck in unhealthy relationships, where you're stuck in a victim mindset, where you're stuck in believing that you can't have anything better, you can't do anything differently, and that maybe you think you don't deserve better. I don't encourage anyone to stay stuck in that mindset. I encourage growth and healing 100% and taking ownership of your own life and your own choices. At the same time, I totally understand why women get sucked into these situations, in these toxic relationships with narcissists and sociopaths and psychopaths, where they just feel like they're trapped. The victimization of a woman or a person in terms of abuse goes much further than the actual abuse. Whether it's emotional abuse, physical abuse, psychological abuse, any type of abuse, it does not stop there. So if it was only the abuse, then one could say, okay, I recognize this is abuse, or maybe someone can help me recognize it and I can get myself out of it. But it cuts much deeper. And this is the thing. The abuse chips away at your entire sense of self. You have no self-esteem. You have no self-confidence. You have no belief in your ability to create your life, make your own choices. You have been conditioned to believe that you are worthless, you have nowhere to go, no one even wants you, you have likely been isolated from family and friends. You are left in such a position of nothingness when you have encountered abuse in a relationship. You're basically in a dissociated state, which is a trauma response. So there's a lot that goes into coming out of that and just being able to regulate to the point where you can function again. There are lots of steps in healing from that. But just know that there are so many reasons that women stay stuck in those relationships. But I want to talk about one of the main reasons, okay? One of the main reasons that people, women, and whoever else don't leave these relationships is that we're trying to convince someone who is hurting us to actually love us. So, let me say that again. One of the reasons that women stay in these unhealthy relationships is that we are trying to convince someone who is hurting us to actually love us. And that doesn't make sense on so many levels. But you have to understand that when you have been victimized in a way where you have no belief in yourself, no self-esteem, no self-confidence, all you feel you have is that person. That person who is supposed to love you, that same person who is hurting you, that you turn to for support and to be rescued. So the same person who is pushing you into the deep waters is the same person that you're wanting to throw you the raft to get you out. And they do. And that's how you get trauma bonded on them, because you get both. And you're always in a position of wanting more of the loving, kind gestures. And they're going to continue to give you that in small doses and breadcrumbs. And so you feel like, well, at least I'm getting that. So maybe they do love me. And if they don't, then maybe I need to try to convince them to. Because if they don't, and I can't convince them to, then what does that say about me? What does that mean for me? Which basically affirms that core belief that you may have that you're not lovable. And so I'm not really going to get into where that comes from. Well, briefly, but I'm not going to go into detail about that. So toxic people, narcissists, sociopaths, psychopaths will prey on people who are vulnerable, people who already have a low sense of self-esteem, people who are just not very confident in themselves and maybe don't feel very worthy. They don't have a high sense of self-worth. And I know there are a lot of conflicting opinions about that and beliefs about that. And listen, like I always say, there are exceptions to everything. But usually, for the most part, a narcissist seeks you out because you are an easy target. And I know that there are some people who say, well, actually, narcissists seek out people who are strong, confident, and all that because they like to tear them down. That may be an exception. And there may be some folks who are really sure of themselves, but happen to fall victim to the narcissist's very masterful and skillful manipulation. I'm not saying that doesn't happen. It happens. But for the most part, if you've gotten yourself involved with any type of toxic individual, and by toxic, I mean someone who causes intentional harm, and you overlooked the red flags because they were there, and you made excuses, you stayed, right? Which is what we're talking about. Why women stay, why they don't leave. Now, there's a chance that you may have somehow you didn't see the red flags and you stayed, and of course your sense of self was crushed, just like anyone else's who would have found themselves in a relationship with that type of person. But for the most part, the narcissist goes after the more vulnerable, easier target, because their main purpose is power and control. And yeah, if you're pretty sure of yourself, then they're probably skillful enough to break that down. But why do that? It's so much easier for them to find someone who they can easily control and manipulate. And that's usually what they go for. But the reality is, most women who find themselves in these relationships that are abusive and unhealthy in some way were never given the gift of self-love. And I call it a gift. It's one of the earliest and most important gifts that we get from our parents, because we come to this world as not a blank slate, right? We have genetics, we have some things that are already in the makings. But as far as learning who we are and learning our sense of self-worth and whether or not we feel lovable and feel loved, that directly comes from caregivers and parents. Because they teach you through either verbalizations that you're worthy and that you're lovable. They teach you through interactions and experiences that you're worthy and you're lovable. And sometimes when they're not able to do that, or if they do that inconsistently, where you don't really believe it and really feel it at your core, well, when that happens, then you don't get that. You don't get that sense of self-worth, that sense of self-love, and so you spend so much of your lifetime, especially as an adult, once you have the awareness, seeking out something that you never got. And so when we happen to meet these narcissists or other toxic individuals, listen, I say narcissists because they're all narcissists. Every narcissist might not be a sociopath or a psychopath, but all psychopaths and sociopaths are narcissists. So I'm going to say, narcissists. That's why I use that term a lot. It doesn't mean that only the narcissist is capable of these things. It just means the narcissist, that term really applies to anyone who intentionally, consistently harms someone for the purpose of their own gain. But the narcissist may not rise to the level of the sociopath or the psychopath. As I mentioned, the psychopath and sociopath is a narcissist. So when you meet this narcissist and they are making you feel so good about yourself in the beginning, when they're idealizing you and love bombing you and giving you so much of what you never got, you become so addicted to that and desperate for more of that, because finally someone is making you feel seen, heard, worthy, and loved. It's not real, but it feels real. And even when you know it's not real, you want it to be. And that's where this whole convincing them to love us comes in. Even when I see this person for who they are, I know that what I'm getting from them isn't really real. But because I need that so bad, and because I'm so desperate to be loved and feel loved and believe that I'm lovable, that overrides everything. That's how strong, intense, powerful that need is. It supersedes everything. So you have to get to a place where you discover that whatever you're trying to get, as much as you need it and deserve it, you're never going to get from them. You cannot even love them enough to make them love you back. You can't convince them that you are good enough and worthy of their love. And that's why we stay. Because we think, well, maybe. But sometimes they're so good to me. Maybe they really love me. It sure feels like it sometimes. Even when they rescue me after they've hurt me, that feels like love to me. They saw my pain that they caused, and they soothed it in some way. And they nurtured me back to help. And then they hurt me again. And we can stay stuck in that cycle until we get some help to get out of it. Listen, almost everyone who is in, well, I'll probably go so far as to say it's everyone who is in an abusive relationship needs some help in getting out of it. One, you need to have a safety plan, especially if you're dealing with someone who is violent or has the capacity for violence. Secondly, you need a neutral person to help you see the reality of your situation, because we don't believe friends and family members, because we believe that they're just being emotional. They're just seeing the worst in him because they don't like him. You need a neutral person to help you be able to see. You need a neutral person to help you see the reality of the situation. And you need someone to help you identify and change those limiting beliefs that you have that keeps you stuck where you are with that person. And lastly, you need someone who is going to help you go back to that wound. Go back to that place of that original trauma where you first started to believe that you were unworthy, and heal from that and grieve what you lost and what you didn't get. And you need someone to help you find your sense of self, rebuild your self-confidence and self-esteem, and create the life that you want. It's hard to do it on your own. So I recommend anyone in that situation try and get some help. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and close this video. I went on longer than I planned on. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. That does help the algorithm. Leave a comment about other topics you would like to see me talk about. Share this video out with others who you think may benefit from it. And if you have not subscribed to my channel, go ahead and check out some of my other content. And if you like it, go ahead and subscribe. We'd love to have you be a part of this community.